Hey everyone, Mike here. I want to give you a rundown on the anatomy of tube flies. They've kind of become my favorite for one particular fly that I tie. Now, they're not for everything. I mean, you can do articulated flies and kind of get the same effect on the action and that sort of thing. However, with the tube fly, there are some things that happen that you cannot do with any articulated or single hooked fly. And that would be the, let's go down to this camera down below here, and I'll show you this one here. This is just a crude one I threw together for this video. But it has an anatomy of tubing on the inside of the foam. This is what I call a streaper, because a streaper is the streamer and a popper. So this is a streaper. That's what I call it. It's a streaper. And the reason why I like these flies is because the hook is easily threaded onto them. You run your line down through the front end of the tube here. It comes out the back, and then you tie the line onto your hook, it doesn't matter what kind of a wrap that you do or knot that you do on the hook, because it's not going to be exposed. The hook knot is not exposed on a tube fly, and as you put it on, when you pull the line, the hook gets pulled through here. Let's do it with this one here. As you pull the line through on this side, then the hook gets pulled through and follows it, and then that way you have the hook inside this tubing, and you need to have a flexible piece of tubing and a rigid piece of tubing. The rigid section is what you tie your fly on. It's what will hold the thread and materials best, because if you try to tie it on something very flimsy like this piece of pliable tubing here, the materials are going to fall off on you. You've got a better ability of keeping the material on your tube by using a rigid piece of tubing. So it goes in like so, and what this really does, the reason why I like it so much, is it allows me to do a few things here. Number one, it allows me to change the hook up by just using the same fly, and out on the water I can change the fly to something that has a shorter hook like this. So say I'm using this hook, I'm starting out with this one, and I find myself getting short strikes. Well, then I bring my fly in, I pull the shorter hook out, and I put the one with a longer shank on it in, and then that way I've got a chance of those short strikes, which short strikes are actually a lot of times a short strike is not where the fish misses the fly. It actually comes up, at least for smallmouth bass, and I imagine it goes for a lot of species. They come up and they stun the fly because what they're wanting to do is stun the bait to make it easier for them to take it in as food, and that's the reason for it. It's not always that they actually miss, but they come up and miss. They come up and hit it or strike short to scare or startle the fish, and that's where one of the things that's really hard to do. I'm getting much better at it now, but one of the really hard things to do is when you do get a strike. I mean, your first reaction is when you see, especially when you're fishing topwater, if you see the strike, you're almost always ready to just set the hook really fast, and you do want to do that. You can't pause too long, but if you can control your hook set when you see a strike, you can tell pretty quick if the strike is a solid one, because your line will get pulled a little bit, and you'll be able to tell by watching your line. However, if you see a strike and your line doesn't pull, then that means that fly is still sitting there, no fish on the other end. And the fish thought that it came up and smacked your fly, and with the fly still sitting there, if you don't try and set the hook and then get, discouraged and pull your fly in real fast to send it back out again, if you see that it gets hit, there's still slack in the line, it doesn't go tight on you, leave it there, because what will happen is that fish has thought that it has stunned this bait and will come back up and take the fly. I can't tell you how much more hookups I have gotten by just being patient and watching my line. Line goes tight, set the hook. You see the splash, I know the initial reaction is to set the hook, but sometimes if you don't see the tight line, you might want to give it a few seconds longer so that the fish can come back and take take your bait. But anyway, back to the hooks and the anatomy. So you can see where there's some things that can be beneficial by right on the water using the same fly. I can change the hook out. In fact, I can even, if I want to, go from, this is like a circle hook. It's a glow bug hook, but we'll call it a circle hook because that's what this hook is here. It's a hook. It's a hook. Gosh, I'm trying to get my tongue untwisted here. It is an octopus circle hook. That's what I was trying to say. So what we want to do, or what you want to do, what you might want to do, let's put it that way, what you might want to do is go from this really small hook here to a much larger hook on your bait. And the same fly, when you pull the line through, the same fly's in there. Now you've got yourself a nice large hook setting in there instead of something like that. There's more hook to get into the fish that you're trying to catch. Now that's what's underneath the materials, is this right here. So now that you have to use a piece of rigid and a piece of flexible tubing to put into whatever vise you have. There's a few different styles out there. You've got one, HMH makes a tube vise. You put it in, only with mine, I don't need to have the hook, and I don't have it with me right now. I've got them somewhere. But there's a 90 bent into this rod that goes through your tubing that stops right at the end here. And then that way you can push it in nice and tight so it holds everything so it doesn't spin on you. But the style that I have here allows me to run everything all the way through and lock it down. Well, you don't want to lock it down until you get your rod all the way to the end of the tubing there. So now I've got it there. See, that's a nice solid connection there. It's a nice solid rod going through there that if I didn't have the rod there, let me kind of show what happens. Number one, you'll crank down on this and you'll damage this tube. This rod going through here prevents you from damaging the tube. With this style of tube vise that clamps into a standard vise, you can also, it's a little harder to do, but you can also put your flexible tubing on before you tie your fly. You can do it that way if you want. I actually like to do it since I have this style of a vise for the tube fly. So I stick it in there and it's solid. If it's not in there and you crank it down, look at that. Try to tie onto that right there. It's not going to do a really good job, and chances are it's not going to. One of the things that I like to do when I tie to a tube is I'll take a file and I'll run it along the tubing to really rough it up, and then I'll take, as I tie on the thread, wrap the thread on, and I'm not really going to do it here, but I'm just saying, as I wrap the thread on, I'll put a little bit of super glue right along the edge there, and that will capture, the super glue will capture the thread to the tubing and give you a really nice base so that your fly doesn't spin around on you, you know, as you're tying it or as it's being used. So yeah, that's the anatomy, that's the inside. Now let me kind of go over where I get my tubes from. I use two different size tubes. This particular fly here, wrong camera. This particular fly here, it's really small. It's about 2.5 inches long. It's the one I catch a lot of fish on in the summertime on the North Fork of Paint Creek here in southern Ohio. And I don't mind telling people exactly where I fish because I don't think my creek is a fish bowl where all the fish are hanging out in one spot. In fact, I know smallmouth bass aren't as nomadic as like a hybrid bass, but I think they do move around. They go to the shallows to feed, and then they go back to their deeper holes. Their deeper hole might be on the other side of another set of riffles. It's really, you know, it's kind of hard to say, and depending on how deep the riffle is and how easy it is for them to pass through, whether or not they'll do that is another story. But anyway, the small streaper that I use is very, very effective, and I like it because I like the tube flies because I can change the hook. And the other thing is with the, you know, as I was saying a few minutes ago, whatever style knot you put on your hook is not seen because the line goes through, you tie it in, you pull the line back through, you set your hook in the tubing, okay? And then once it's set in tubing, the line comes straight out. It comes straight out, and there's no knot shown, so you don't have that issue. And the line is usually much smaller than the inside of that tube, so it does give the fly some movability in there. Okay, so the source that I use for the tubes that I tie, I've got two different size tubes that I use, and one size is from these things right here. These are from what you call a bunch of balloons, and you can get those sometimes at Kmart. You can get them at Party City Outlet, and you can get them online on Amazon if you don't have any of those things close to you. But all they are inside the bag, inside this bag, are these balloons, tie or rubber band onto the tip of these tubes here, and these tubes make perfect tubes for the flies. And all you have to do is when you get them is just pull all those things off of there, and then just throw them away. And then cutting them is pretty easy. And you'll want to, when you do this, you're going to want to use a very, very sharp X-Acto knife, and you'll be able to cut those down right as close to the to the cap as you possibly can. And then as you're cutting them, you can kind of pull them away as I'm doing here. There, just like that. And then this piece right here, you just throw it away, and then you can pull the rest of the balloons off. I just throw them away like so. Now, for some people, that is a very large supply of tubes, and not only that, you can get 4 to 5 flies out of one length of tubes. So we're talking, hundreds. If not 100, you could possibly get more out of those tubes right there. I'll cut those down later on. Now there's another way for the larger flies when you're going to get into hooks usually I showed that circle hook a few minutes ago. That's a pretty large circle hook. I'm not real sure of the size of it. It's probably around a 1/0 or something like that. But there's a larger tubing, flexible tubing, that you can use that where it's not as hard to get in. See, this is the tubing that was that's used for the smaller hooks, or the smaller ones like that. So you just put it right in there, and it slides in nice and stays, no matter how far you put it in. That's the other nice thing about tube flies. You can, depending on how long of a piece of tubing you have from the end of your rigid tube, like so, you can actually change it so that you can run your hook in further or have it out further. But as you can see, although you can use this larger hook, like I showed you a minute ago on that smaller fly, it really is tough to get it in there. So for larger flies, I've got a larger tube, and it fits these hooks just like the smaller one, like the smaller hook does to the smaller tubing. So that's a benefit, to be able to run these things in and out very easily. But the rigid tube that I use right there, where it comes from, and I try to find things that are commonly easy for everyone to find, because if I just go out and I've got a pretty nice shop downstairs, and I've got some resources and material resources that a lot of people don't in their local areas. So I want to try and make everything that I put on my YouTube channel easy, very easy for everybody to be able to do without any special tools or special materials. And anybody can find a bunch of balloons, and everyone, now that's for the smaller tube, but now everybody can find these right here. This is just a standard Bic ballpoint pen, and the inside of the pen, this is the tube that holds the ink. So how do we get this cleaned up so that we have a really nice, clean looking tube like this? Well, it's pretty easy. I got a little bottle of denatured alcohol, and you can buy the denatured alcohol. You can buy small cans of it at your home center, and I get these at Hobby Lobby in large packs. And this is just a pipe cleaner. They use them for crafts, for whatever they do with them, I don't know, but the pipe cleaner is pretty awesome for my use for this particular application. So let's go into exactly how I get this cleaned up, and that's just take the cap off, throw it away, take the tip of the pen and pull the tube out, and then I'm going to discard this too. So I'm just going to throw that away. Now, I rigged up a thing to push the ink out with this syringe. You can get these at hobby stores as well, and then I've got it set up and glued into place. Let me see, did I bring one over? And here it is. Okay, this is the way it comes right here. And then what I do is, since this larger tube fits this tube on the ink pen, what I wanted to do was find a syringe where this would also fit on the end of this, where the nozzle is on this syringe, and get that pushed on there. I have some shrink tubing on mine to kind of help hold it in place. I don't think that you really need to do that, because it holds it on pretty tight. There we go. But that's what I use to do the next step, which is make sure I pull this all the way out first. And before pulling the tip off, I want to be able to push this on, because when I push it on, if I take the tip off, then the ink's going to come out the other end. I have a paper towel here. I folded it into four pieces, and then into quarters, I should say. And then I put the hose right on the dry end where there's no ink, and then I'll pull the tip off just like so and throw that away. Now once I have that, what I do is I'll take the syringe and I'll push it down just like this, and that pushes out the ink. It looks like that's all the ink that's in there for the most part. I mean, there's more, but that's it. See, you could hear that there's air coming out now. So now what I can do is pull off the end, set my syringe aside, and now here's where the cleaning comes on the tube to get that residue of the ink inside the tube out. And that's a simple matter of taking this denatured alcohol and shoving the pipe cleaner in there, taking it out, and then go to the dry end again, the end that doesn't have any ink, and run it in just like this. And then you'll see as I run it in, it cleans it out. That alcohol is just moving that ink right on out of there. Look at that. Look at that. How nice and clean that comes out. Just like so. And then I pull it out, and there it is right there. Now I have myself a nice clean piece of tubing right there to make me some tube flies with. It was a very easy thing to do, and then all I do is I just take this and I'll wrap it up and throw a rubber band around it or something and put it in my trash, and it'll eventually dry out and I don't have to worry about it. But anyway, that's the anatomy of a fly. I'm not going to tie any flies up right now, but that's all there is to it. And if you try this, I think that you're going to, and especially if you fish them, I think you're going to find that you're going to really, really like, if you like using streamers, and especially what I call my streaper, which is a streamer popper. Get these babies up on top of the water, they go in the water, and they kind of eventually, the hook drags it down so it's sitting like this. And then when you pop it up, the fly comes up, and then it drifts back down, and the head, where all the foam is here, the head holds it up on the surface. So you're surface fishing with a popper, with a streamer that's a popper. That's why I call it a streaper. Anyway, this is Mike. Until the next video, I hope you got something out of this. If you did, please subscribe. Let your friends know. Feel free to share this on any platforms that allow sharing of videos. And till the next video. Now, I will do some tying on the flies so that you can see some of the ones that I put together. I'll do one on the streaper. I might already have one on my YouTube channel. I'm not real sure. It's a little bit long if I do, because I go over everything. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to break it down so that the videos aren't too long, and this one's already become probably a little bit too long for some people, but I can't please everybody. Anyway, this is Mike. Until the next video, we'll catch you later.